Okay, for those who don't speak Welsh, I'll switch to English. So good morning. Very good morning to you all, and thanks for being here. So a very warm welcome to all of you in here and all of you watching me on live. Okay. And also a big thanks to SQL Bits and our sponsors, Quest. This is, by the way, a non-technical session, so I'm not going to bore you to death using SQL technical bits. So this non-technical session is to see how we can enhance, emphasize, and articulate all the fantastic technical work that we do. Introducing myself, my name is Prashant. Prashant, with a tongue twister surname. Well, where does it go? There we go. So my name is Prashant Bhargava. I'm a solutions architect with Capgemini, specializing in cloud data and normally everything to do with data. I've got more than maybe 10 to 15 years of experience in consuming and managing data. In my previous role as a database team lead, I used to look after for about more than 1,500 production databases across SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, for a number of clients across various industries. So that's what I used to do, and that's my experience. That's about me. So in this session today, as we know, it's just a 20-minute session. We are going to basically go through what I think are three main and very relevant topics for anyone involved in database technologies. Very first of which is what DBAs do, because it's a mystery to many of our colleagues, to clients. So it is really important to know what DBAs do. Typical customer challenges, these are something which do not fall into BAU, not project-oriented, but still needs to be dealt by the database team. And then we'll look at the DBA crystal ball, where we'll try to look into what future holds for us as DBAs. Starting off with what a DBA does. So as I said, it's a mystery to a number of people. It's a mystery to our clients who pay for us. It's a mystery to the end users. It's also a mystery to sometimes our own top management. And hence, they have their own views. As you can see, everyone thinks or has their own views as to what DBAs do. And based on those views, they evaluate as to what's the importance, what's the relevance, and what is it that DBAs do. And so I think it's only fair to say that the onus lies on the database team, the DBAs, and the DBA team lead to make sure that people know what they do. Because obviously, the customers need to know, because they are the ones who get impacted the most by anything we do. The client also needs to know, because they are the ones who are paying for our services. And mostly, our management needs to know, because they are the ones who are running the very important pay review at the end of the year. So I think one of the best ways to try and convey people as to what is it that we do is by making sure we document things in the most effective way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very simple example. And there are three reasons why I'm going to take this example. The very simple example that I'm going to elaborate about is installing a SQL Server instance. I'm pretty certain all of you must have done it a number of times. And the reason I'm taking this as an example is because I've seen a number of people documenting it with just screen dump of the setup wizard into a Word document. The second reason is because on a number of occasions, I've been asked by the client as to why does it take me so long to provide them with a SQL instance? Why can't I just finish it off in 4 hours and hand it to them without thinking about the consequences that it may lead to in the future? Okay, so what does when we document a SQL Server install in that way, what kind of picture does it paint? So let's have a look at what everyone thinks about a SQL Server install. So this is exactly what it looks like. So when we say, I'm going to run a SQL install, this is what it looks like to a client. And obviously, what we have done is we have encapsulated all the details that go before the process, that happen after the process, and we have trivialized it so much that they think, yes, it is just, if you click next 10 times, you'll have a fantastic SQL Server up and running for you. However, if you look at what all is involved in installing a SQL Server, and by no means this is a comprehensive list, yeah? There are a number of things that we do before even starting the install. There are a number of things we do after installing it. Obviously, it's missing quite a few bits there. But each of these stacks that you see, yeah, is capable and can produce a document on its own. And that document can tell the process you followed, how that process is going to make your SQL Server more responsive, more secure, more faster. Yeah? And it also tells you all the good practices that you follow. It also includes all the industry standards that you meet. So all that goes into that one single document. And when you put a bundle of 10 documents together in an email of deliverables, when you send out that final email to the client saying your SQL instance is ready to host your client databases, that is when the client comes to know all the things that you have done to get that instance up and running for them. Okay. Also, to look at these, before you send out to the client, what you need to make sure is that all your documentation is consistent with, obviously, your branding, consistent in terms of terminology that you use. Make sure it is not too technical. It is technically accurate. It is updated for the current version. So if you're installing SQL 2019 or if you're using a CIS standard, a certain version of document, make sure it is compatible for that version. It is proofread. Never send out a document containing information about another application instance or another client for that matter. And it has a targeted delivery. What I mean to say is that you send it out to the relevant people. You send it out to the account manager. You send it out to service delivery manager. You send it out to the project manager. You send it out to your own, maybe the team lead or director. Okay, you do not send it out to everyone. Okay, so that is, if we start doing that, then that is going to convey a lot about what we do as database administrators. This was just an example. We can do this for all the processes that we have. We can do this for DR. We can do this for an upgrade. We can do this for a migration. And that is when people will start knowing about what we do. Now, the documentation that we produce, it is not simply documentation for documenting purposes. That same set of documents can be used for handovers. Same set of documents can be used for onboarding new DBA. The same set of documents can be used for maybe forming the basis of your DR documentation. It can be used for if you have an audit. So there are multiple uses, and all of them will be targeted once you do your initial documentation process perfectly. So I think documentation is something, it not just makes your boat go fast, but it is something that lifts all the boats. So I think it is a must that we should follow a proper documentation process, make sure everyone knows the fantastic work that we do. Quickly moving on to the next important slide, which deals with the difficult conversation bits. Now, we talk to the customers on a number of occasions. What is specific about these difficult conversations? These are the conversations that either the DBA team or the customer don't want to initiate and don't want to talk about. So these are the things, or that's why it's termed as difficult conversations. So for example, unfortunately, they also don't sit 100% in BAU sometimes and do not even sit as project. So they are between the boundaries. So let's start with the first one, which is the root cause analysis. So the root cause analysis is usually done when there is a service disruption or something that we would typically classify as a P1. So the customer has already suffered a P1, a service disruption. He's not a happy bunny at all. And obviously, following a P1, there always has to be a root cause analysis. A good root cause analysis is something that will identify the cause and also propose a fix. Now, without identifying a cause and fix, there's no RCA. And in order to achieve this, you need to make sure that you are actively monitoring your systems. If the system is not monitored, or if the RCA is done after a while where all the logs have been overwritten, there is no certain way for you to identify the root cause. And if you cannot identify a root cause, then you cannot propose a fix. Okay? So a very good way to handle this situation is to make sure the system is monitored. If it is not monitored, it is advisable to let the customer know that the provided root cause analysis is based on the logs alone, and it cannot be 100% said that this is what happened. And it should be that the instance should be monitored, and if it occurs again, then we'll provide you with a 100% obvious root cause. So that's with the root cause analysis. Obviously, as we can see, the root cause analysis can be because of degraded performance, loss of connectivity, or simply why did the node fail over. In this case, I think I have a very good example when we're supporting one of our clients, which is a worldwide online service provider, online testing service provider. So what happened was, after the COVID period, when they started, so in-person testing, no one could connect to the or log in to the application. And the reason was because they were getting database timeout or server timeout, connection timeout. And obviously, because of that, the DBA team was in crosshairs. So luckily, that system, because we knew it was a high priority system, it was actively monitored. And when we checked, the login block, which you only used to consist of 4 select statements, had 5 select statements and an update statement into it. Now, someone from the application team, taking advantage of the downtime during the COVID period, slipped in that update statement to make a small change, which was to say, welcome back, customer, rather than just welcome to the customer. And that update caused a row lock, which was quickly escalated by SQL Server to a table lock, and people started getting timeout errors. So I think that's the power of, I think we saved about 60,000 pounds in terms of service credits, because the service was down for about 3 days. I think moving on to, I think I'll talk about this resource request first. So resource requests are when, irrespective of whether a new server is commissioned with capacity planning for next 3 years or 5 years, few days down the line, year down the line, you will always encounter a problem where you are, one of your resources, maybe compute, storage, or memory, is hitting 80 or 90%, and you want to make sure that you continue providing the service, so you highlight it to the client about this. And the client, of course, is not very happy because he knows he's been going to ask to buy more resources and pay more money. And specifically in terms of, say, CPU, it is a very expensive resource when it comes to SQL Server because licensing is attached to the CPU. So obviously, he's not very happy. He's not willing to have this conversation. He's also saying, well, it was designed for 5 years. Why are you coming back to me saying this is what has happened? So the best way to deal this is not to just email them telling them about the resources. What you need to do is you need to provide them with information as to why this is happening. And once you do that, probably identify the table, query, or the person causing it, and they'll be much more appreciable about having these additional resources. The process audit is when people are trying to look at how you implement security processes, or resource utilization is when they're trying to save cost and asking you for resources that are running at, say, 50% or 40% for a given number of time. Change is when they are looking to audit your change process. One of the best ways to deal with this, especially the security and resource utilization, is when you can simply code them and put them as a report that goes out as an email to them every, say, every month, every 2 months. It is an added functionality and service that you can provide them. Okay, so that's about the process audit. I think we'll quickly have a look at the monitoring over here, because as we can see, the last 3 things were mostly dependent on monitoring. And every DBA has their own monitoring tool, which they have accumulated over years. But they do not grow cross database technologies. They depend on the users or DBA's own experience and skill sets. And they obviously do not provide a bitmap like or a desktop like this, which reports on all your estate. So I think something like Foglight, which Quest has, helped us a lot in the past. So these are just 2 screen dumps from their monitoring tool. Coming to the DBA crystal ball. So this is the past, as how we used to use centralized database, where we used to have client server, then we moved to N-tier or 2-tier architecture. The same was moved to the web-based when we moved from moving applications onto the web. And this is the last one I want to focus on, because that is the time when people started talking about, screen estate, screen real estate. That is when people started talking about how to store all the data that is displayed on the screen as one single unit, and how to retrieve it, because that is much more faster than using RDBMS. That is when people started using XML and JSON to store those languages, and that is when the seed for NoSQL databases was sowed. From there, coming to present, this is where we are. Everything is moving to cloud. We have fantastic offering from Microsoft about Azure SQL, SQL on Azure, one of them being IaaS, the other being PaaS. Azure SQL targeted at small vendors who want to move to cloud. SQL on Azure targeted for big people or bigger industries who just want to do a lift and shift. Soon they realized the gap in terms of compatibility, and they came up with Azure MI, and then Azure SQL Edge. They also moved a lot of SQL components onto the cloud and made them cloud-native apps. Data Lake replaces Hadoop distributed file systems and many hosting environments. Data Factory replaces SSIS. Synapse Analytics replaces SSAS. They also provided incentives, such as incentives to plan, migrate, and monitor their systems, like the Azure Landing Zone Architecture and Cloud Adaptation Framework. They also provided financial incentives in forms of Azure Hybrid user benefits and the Azure Migration Modernization Program, partner-led, which actually gives your partner money to move people who are ready to adopt cloud technologies. So they are paying for you to move. And coming to the crystal ball, these are the technologies. While we are moving or busy moving everything to the cloud, IoT and AI have slowly crept into not just businesses, but even our households. I think in future, these are the ones that are going to produce a lot of data, and we might as well see a different format which is more suitable for data that has been used by IoT and AI to store, and it will perform much better than RDBMS. I think in future we'll see more of these get into mainstream for SQL Server. Same with cloud native and analytics. I think it wouldn't be wrong if I today say that all networks actually lead to cloud. Thank you. That's my time. Ready for questions?
Thank you. So what is your take on now? I think it's become much more difficult to predict the cost and the complexity of the entire stack, as you showed. It's
Yes.
becoming increasingly difficult.
Yes.
So how do you handle this?
Yeah, I had no idea as to how to handle this. Yeah, there are when someone is planning to move to cloud, I wouldn't say Azure or Google Cloud or AWS. When they're planning to move to cloud, obviously they have all these options. And then what the solution partner would tell them is a comparison. He would give them a comparison based on the number of servers or the workload they are trying to move. Yeah? And based on that, the client would determine as to what needs to be done. But I've just come to know about Quest's new product, which actually does that for you. So if you are monitoring your system using Foglight, it has a built-in functionality, which not only allows you to select your workload and number of servers that you would like to move to a certain cloud. For example, if you want to move it to Azure, it will also allow you to select the zones, the regions that you can move it to, and it will give you a cost comparison between those regions as well. So such tools, which are already out in the market, are well capable of giving you how much you would be spending, so you know about the costs before you even plan to migrate.